spend some time thinking about. Okay? Margaret.
Josh, the president campaigned so vigorously for Hillary Clinton on the trail, working this so hard. I know you can't read sentiment this early on, truly, and discern what the message was, but can you at least say why you think the White House's own internal predictions and read were so wrong?
Yeah. Well, listen, it's not just our read of this that was wrong. Just about every public poll that we saw was wrong. You guys will check me on this because you guys follow this a little bit more closely than I did. I'm not aware that either candidate campaigned in Wisconsin. And I think that's a clear indication that everybody, including both candidates, expected Secretary Clinton to win Wisconsin. And she didn't. And it's not close enough that anybody's calling for a recount. So it is clear that nobody got the outcome that they expected last night. Now, does that mean that the polling industry has now been officially disrupted, or that political consultants are going to have to change the way they do business? Maybe, and that'll be something interesting for them to consider over the next couple of years. But I think it's just hard to tell exactly what the message was. As I referred to, what the message from voters is. As I mentioned earlier, there are a substantial number of voters that voted for Barack Obama twice and then voted for Donald Trump yesterday. And given the vigorous opposition that President-elect Trump professed to have for the Obama agenda, it raises a lot of questions about why those voters supported him. And the answer to that is not obvious to me. Maybe it is to somebody else. And I suspect that political analysts and academics and political professionals, are going to spend days and weeks and months and maybe even years digging into these results and trying to get greater clarity to explain the outcome.
But does this in some way, I mean, the president, you talked about some of the rhetoric he's used, but he used very stark terms saying the very future of the republic is hinged on this election, that it was a defense of American values. Really laying the stakes in very stark terms. So, I mean, does he still believe that today, that the viability of the America he believes this country is at stake?
Listen, as I mentioned earlier, the argument that the president was making on the campaign trail was an authentic one. It reflected his views. It wasn't just a slogan. It wasn't just a bumper sticker. He was making an argument that he deeply believes about the direction that he'd like to see the country go.
But he doesn't believe democracy is at risk. I mean, the future of the republic, he said that repeatedly in North Carolina and elsewhere.
The president made a forceful argument, and he stands by that argument, but the time for making that argument has passed. The American people rendered their judgment, and President Obama doesn't get to choose his successor, the American people do. And they did. And they didn't choose the person that President Obama supported. And so now the responsibility that President Obama has is to turn his attention to prioritizing a smooth transition with his successor and ensuring a peaceful transition of power. But frankly, the president's aspirations are higher than just a peaceful transition of power. He wants to make sure that we've got an effective transition that gives the next president the opportunity to get a running start. Because now that the election's over, it's a good time to remember that we're Americans first, and all of us are rooting for the success of President Trump as he assumes the awesome responsibility of trying to unite and lead this country.
Can you tell us any color around how this happened last night? Who informed the president? How he spent his evening?
The president was monitoring returns from the residents last night. I don't have a lot of details to share from there. Obviously, he relied on staff to help coordinate the calls that he placed last night to Secretary Clinton and to President-elect Trump, respectively. And he stayed up late in order to do that. He wasn't able to reach President-elect Trump until after President-elect Trump had delivered his remarks last night, so it was rather late. But and obviously we had to work through staff in order to make that happen.
And the president, if he goes on this trip, as you said, or you said that schedule's not changing,
Mhm.
how is he going to explain to allies what happened? I mean, the president on mostly all of his recent foreign trips has basically said he's confident Hillary Clinton's going to win. None of what just transpired was going to happen.
Mhm.
What is his message going to be? I mean, it would seem to be redirecting what was going to be a farewell visit.
Yeah, well, listen, the president spent a lot of time on his foreign travels over the last 12 to 18 months, offering reassurance to our partners and allies around the world about the state of the political debate in this country and the likely outcome of the election. And now that we have an outcome of the election, I think the president will continue to offer reassurance to our closest allies and partners about the steadfast commitment of the United States to the kinds of alliances and partnerships that advance our interests and keep our country safe. Many of our strongest alliances are alliances that have been fortified by Democratic and Republican presidents. And President Obama obviously invested a lot of his own time and attention to prioritizing investments in many of those alliances, particularly in the Asia Pacific. And President-elect Trump will chart a foreign policy path that he believes is in America's best interest. He will do so after getting the benefit of briefings from President Obama and from the national security experts in the Obama administration that have been implementing that policy and implementing that strategy. I think the reassurance that President Obama can offer to a lot of our allies is that traditionally, and for generations in some cases, our alliances have transcended individual presidents and individual political parties, in part because some of our alliances are rooted in the deep cultural ties between our two countries. But ultimately,
Margaret.
Sean, you mentioned that Jared Kushner has a team working with him. Can you help us understand exactly what's in the portfolio and who's on the team, and I have to follow to that?
Yeah, I mean, he's announced the Office of American Innovation the other day. We named a bunch of those folks that have been part of that team, and as he looks at various aspects of government, he works with different people in the White House that oversee different parts of that portfolio, whether it's part of the team that's doing the Middle East was one thing. So you've got Jason Greenblatt, who's been traveling to the Middle East and other places to do that. There's people like Reed Cordish and Chris Liddell that are part of the team that are talking about the Office of American Innovation that he has discussed last week with respect to opioid use and others. I mean, so there is a team, depending on the subject, that is working with him, and he is providing oversight and direction.
So he's overseeing teams handling all these different issues, whether it's Mexico, Canada, Israel, Palestine, Iraq,
Sure.
Saudi.
Well, again,
all
remember
of
on
that.
Iraq, don't go too far there. He was invited by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as was Tom Bossert, the assistant to the president for Homeland Security, to see the work that's being done there firsthand. I don't think to sort of then translate into he's overseeing Iraq is an accurate assessment. He was invited to go see something by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he's doing it.
But my follow on that is, I appreciate how he's in such a unique position and so trusted by the president. But there are people who could look at the situation and say, the White House isn't meant to be run as a family business. There are institutions with experienced diplomats who have
Right.
years of decades of linguistic and experience on the ground.
With
Why
respect to
is-
what?
With whatever these issues
But
are,
you
the foreign
just
policy issues in
said,
particular that
right.
you
Can
laid
you just
out.
be clear though? Because you just said with years of linguistic experience. So what situation are you specifically referring to?
Well, it's partly why I was asking exactly what's in the portfolio, because it's our understanding that Mr. Kushner is involved with Mexico, that he's involved with Saudi Arabia, that he's involved with Canada, that he's involved with a number of different issues, China
Yeah,
in
and
particular.
I think that there has been, as he has made clear, initially during the transition, he played a very key role in helping facilitate a lot of those. But now that a State Department's up and running, he has started to push a lot of those. But there's obviously people that are going to continue. Absolutely, but there's a lot of relationships that Jared's made over time with different leaders, Mexico being one of them you mentioned, that are going to continue to have conversations with him and help facilitate. That doesn't mean by any means that it's being done without coordination with the State Department. Quite in fact, the opposite. He's continued to work with them and to facilitate an outcome, but he brings a perspective to this and began doing that during the transition. But again, it's not a binary choice where he's doing this at the expense of somebody else.
So he's a direct line to the president, whereas the other institutions are not.
Okay, great. That's even better then. I think that's a win for our government. Share that with your colleagues. Margaret?
Sean, yesterday you said quite definitively that no reason to believe there's any type of investigation with respect to the Department of Justice. Did the Justice Department give you that assurance? Because they're telling the New York Times they did not.
I'm not aware of it, but that's my point, is that we're not aware of anything, and that's why...
You've been told by the Justice Department that there is no investigation.
No.
So there might be one. You just don't know.
No, I said, you're right. I said I'm not aware, and we're not aware, and that's why we want the House and the Senate to do what the President has asked of them, to look into this, but no, we're not aware.
To discover if there is an investigation. That's
No,
part of
to
the
look
work.
into the situation.
The Justice Department is saying, though, that they never gave you the assurances that you gave us.
Okay. No. What the assurance I gave you, Margaret, was that I'm not aware, and that is 100% accurate.
So when you said no reason to believe, it was I'm not aware
That's
if
right.
there's an investigation.
Right. I mean, I don't know that they're not interchangeable. I'm not aware. I don't believe. Look up in a thesaurus, find some other ways, but I don't know that there's a distinction there that's noteworthy. But we're not aware. I don't believe that exists, and that's based on that I've not been aware of. I mean, but that's the answer to that. I mean, someone's asking me if I'm made aware of something, and the answer is no. Then the answer is no.
Well, the question was whether he was the target of a counterintelligence.
Right, and the answer is we're not aware. I don't know how much clearer we can be on this.
So it's just that the White House is not aware if the president is the target of a counterintelligence probe.
Correct. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure what we're dancing around the same question.
Well, because I think yesterday when you came out and corrected and clarified, people took that as a definitive answer that in fact that wasn't.
No, it means we're not aware. I don't just. That should be the definitive answer, Vivian.
I want to give you a chance to respond to something because I think that the president's remarks and your clarification about where he stands on anti-Semitism is clear. But after that statement was made by the president, the Anne Frank Center released a pretty strongly worded one,
right,
saying that these remarks, while well received, are a Band-Aid on the cancer within the Trump administration, saying that there is, whether blessed or otherwise, a sense of xenophobia within this administration.
Yeah, I think it's, look, the president has made clear since the day he was elected, and frankly going back through the campaign, that he is someone that seeks to unite this country. But I think that it's ironic that no matter how many times he talks about this, that it's never good enough. Today, I think, was an unbelievably forceful comment by the president as far as his denunciation of the actions that are currently targeted towards Jewish community centers.
Sean, Southern Poverty, I think you'll want to respond to this.
Okay.
Southern Poverty Law Center said that the number of anti-Muslim groups in the U.S. has tripled between 2015 and 2016 during the time of the campaign. Is this message within the administration, anti-Semitism is not allowed, xenophobia is not allowed, anti-Muslim sentiment within the administration, has the president been forceful about that particular issue?
Well, I think that the president, in terms of his desire to combat radical Islamic terrorism, he understands that people who want to express a peaceful position have every right in our country